Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump has scrapped his plan to charge a 20% fee on cargo shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, just one day after proposing the measure. But this does not signal an easing of U.S. pressure on Iran, as the United States reimposed a naval blockade of all Iranian ports. The hourly minimum wage for next year in Korea has been set at 10,700 won. This marks a 3.7% increase from this year, following months of negotiations involving representatives from labor, business, and the public. SK hynix American depository receipts surged more than 27% on Wall Street, rebounding from a sharp drop in the previous session. This was mainly driven by renewed Wall Street demand for AI memory stocks and a strong interest following the launch of leveraged ETFs linked to the Korean chipmaker. We begin this morning with the latest on the situation in the Middle East. Washington is dropping a proposed charge on commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, opting instead for billions of dollars in new Gulf investment. This comes as the United States tightens pressure on Tehran with a renewed maritime blockade targeting Iranian vessels and cargo. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
US President Donald Trump has reversed his plan to charge civilian ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz a fee equivalent to 20% of their cargo value just one day after announcing the measure. On Tuesday, Trump said the proposed fee would instead be replaced by new trade and investment agreements with Middle Eastern countries, following what he described as very productive talks with regional leaders. Trump had announced a day earlier that the US military would guarantee safe passage for civilian vessels through Hormuz, in return for a payment equal to 20% of the value of cargo carried aboard each ship. The White House argued the charge would compensate Washington for the cost of US forces protecting commercial shipping from Iranian attacks. But the plan drew opposition internationally, particularly from Middle Eastern energy exporters heavily reliant on the strait. Trump named Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain and Kuwait among the countries prepared to invest more heavily in the United States instead.
I don't think anybody should be able to charge a fee for the strait or for any other strait relationship in terms of other sections of the world. I don't think anybody should be really in that position. But we were doing it as a reimbursement. The Gulf states are going to invest a tremendous amount of money into the United States, and that was very satisfactory to me. I think it's actually much better. I fought for that.
The reversal does not signal an easing of US pressure on Iran. US Central Command resumed a maritime blockade beginning 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. The blockade applies to vessels travelling to and from Iranian ports in coastal areas, as well as ships carrying goods linked to Iranian cargo. Trump said the Strait of Hormuz remains open to all other vessels and has claimed oil is flowing more smoothly because of US military presence. He also said the era of Iran killing hundreds of thousands of people, which he said included 52,000 protesters, was over, and insisted Tehran would never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. In the Fox News interview on Tuesday, Trump warned Iran that its power plants and bridges could become targets as early as next week. He said US and Iranian delegations had been in contact that day, but threatened to destroy the facilities if Tehran refused to return to the negotiating table. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And now for more on the situation in the Middle East, we're joined today by Dr. Hassan Gun, visiting professor at the Institute of Middle East Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Professor Gun, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So the United States has resumed this blockade of Iranian ports, but Trump reversed a threat of imposing a fee on all Strait of Hormuz cargo shipping made just a day earlier. So what's the United States trying to get here? How do you think Washington is trying to navigate this war?
The United States has imposed, again, the blockade over the Strait of Hormuz, and this is clearly a clear escalation. What I think that Washington does not want a full-time, like a full-scale war or permanent war in the area. Its objective is only to pressure Iran into reopening the Strait of Hormuz and returning to negotiations. I think there are political reasons for this decision. First of all, Washington wants to restore its credibility after Iran resumed its attacks on cargo ships after June ceasefire arrangement. And second, also Iran wants to the United States also wants to reassure Gulf states that the United States is standing beside them after this attack. And however, this blockade could prolong the conflict even if that is not Washington's intention. There's also a legal diplomatic problem that Trump tried to impose a fee for passing or transit, but he's back on that decision because I think his businessman DNA has proposed that, but his political advisors has advised against that again. So what we have to keep in mind here is that Washington wants to limited escalation for negotiation, not endless war.
Right, and Iran has responded with attacks targeting Bahrain, Jordan, and attacks on 2 tankers associated with the United Arab Emirates traveling through the Hormuz Strait killed 1 crew member. So what's Iran's strategy at this stage of the conflict?
What we have to keep in mind here that although the United States has started this war, but Iran actually found in this war as an opportunity to solve all its lingering problems. So Tehran is using Hormuz as a bargaining leverage. Iran wants sanction relief, access to frozen assets, and recognition of its rule over the Strait of Hormuz or the security arrangement in the area at all. So Iran is pursuing a strategy of what we call controlled retaliation, regional expansion, and economic pressure. Iran wants to show that American military bases and partners across the region are vulnerable to Iranian attacks. So Iran also warning regional governments that helping United States will carry direct security costs for these countries. So Iran also is expanding the geographical scope, or what we call horizontal escalation of the war, of the fighting. And instead of fighting only the United States, they are expanding that to fighting the whole regional allies of the United States. So Gulf countries oppose Iranian attacks, of course, but at the same time, they don't want to be a battlefield for prolonged war between the United States and Iran. So Iran is trying to establish that commercial shipping cannot safely use the Strait of Hormuz without Iranian cooperation. And alternative routes like around near the Omani territories are not going to work. So Iran does not have to attack every and single ship passing through the Strait of Hormuz. They just have to threat or attack one in a while, and that will force all cargo companies to stop passing through because they will fear of getting hit by Iranian projectiles.
Right, and another thing to note is that Israel is going to be holding national elections on October 27th, and this is going to give voters the first chance to pass judgment on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu since the Hamas attack 3 years ago and Israel's conflict with Lebanon. So how might this affect the course of the situation in the Middle East?
The Israeli election also, of course, is a very important turning point because it will make Israeli decision-making more political and more unpredictable. Like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will campaign largely on being the national security guy. He is always dependent on that he has long depended on the claim that he's unequally capable of confronting Iran and protecting Israel. So this gives him 2 possible strategies. The first one is to maintain military pressure on Iran. He fears that accepting compromise before the election would allow his opponents to accuse him of being weak. So another strategy is to continue the operation against Iran military facilities or Iranian targets, will show him as a strong wartime leader. So the second is to secure a diplomatic achievement before the election and show that arrangement as a victory after weakening Iran. So he could therefore support an agreement if he can present it as a victory. So this election also can give the opponents an opportunity because there are military background military guys opponent to Benjamin Netanyahu. So Israeli voters will assess not simply whether military action occurred, but also whether if it is effective or not. So changing government would not necessarily be soft toward Iran because as we all know, most major Israeli political leaders oppose an unrestricted Iranian nuclear program, and also they oppose the reconstruction of Iran's regional military network. So the main difference between these two opponents is the style, the diplomatic style. So maybe the opponents will have a different approach, like a better relationship with the European allies, with the United States, or not personalization of national security policy. So I think the election could also increase tension in Gaza and the West Bank. Right-wing coalition parties may try to secure political or territorial gains before voters go to the polls.
Right, we'll have to keep a close eye on that election in October. All right, Professor Gov't, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
SK hynix American depository receipts on Tuesday surged more than 27% on Wall Street on their third day of trading, rebounding sharply from a 9.3% drop in the previous session. The ADRs closed at $193.92 on the Nasdaq. The rally was driven by renewed Wall Street demand for AI memory stocks, along with strong interest following the launch of leveraged exchange-traded funds linked to SK hynix. The ADRs are trading at a premium of roughly 20 to 30% over the company's whole listed shares, as strong U.S. demand continues to outpace the limited supply available to American investors. And Korean stocks also saw massive gains this morning, triggering buy-side sidecars on both the benchmark KOSPI and secondary KOSDAQ. The market soared over 6% shortly after opening, driven by an overnight rally on Wall Street and a 27% jump in SK hynix ADR shares. As of 9:25 a.m., the KOSPI was trading at 7,325, up 6.8% from the previous session. The rally is largely being led by large-cap tech shares, with Samsung Electronics jumping over 6% and SK hynix rising over 11%. And with the economy gaining momentum on the back of a semiconductor boom, the Korean government has set its highest growth target in 5 years, aiming for 3%. Our Baek Joo-hee reports.
Unveiling its economic strategy for the second half of the year on Tuesday, the government has significantly upgraded the country's growth outlook. The real GDP growth forecast for this year has been revised upwards to 3%, a substantial leap from its initial 2% projection. If achieved, this will mark the highest growth rate since 2021. Meanwhile, nominal GDP growth, which includes inflation, is projected to reach 12.3%, marking the highest level in 3 decades. The adjustment comes as rising chip exports lead to faster corporate investment across the country. Accordingly, the government officially announced its new 345 vision to achieve a fundamental turnaround for the Korean economy.
올해가 잠재 성장률 3%, 세계 무역 4강, 국민소득 5만 불이라는 대체 불가 대한민국으로 도약하는 원년으로 기억될 수 있게 힘을 모아주시길 부탁드립니다.
To achieve this, Korea is accelerating its 3 major mega projects centered on semiconductors and AI. On top of that, new super innovation projects such as sensors and next-generation secondary batteries will be newly designated for aggressive development. With strong tax revenues, the government will provide massive funding to secure these advanced technologies. Also, the government has identified young people and talent development as its core investment targets. This comes amid persistent global risks and a sluggish recovery in the domestic construction sector. In response, the government has pledged to train 200,000 young specialists in high-tech fields and create 200,000 new job opportunities. Officials also promise to quickly address regional gaps and the economic divide between industries. To counter the risk of a triple high inflation, high interest rates, and high exchange rates, the government will deploy full-scale stabilization measures, including large-scale food discounts and flexible energy price controls. Baek Joo-hee, Arirang News.
After months of negotiations, South Korea has finalized its minimum wage for next year. The new hourly rate of 10,700 Korean won was approved by a vote after labor and business representatives failed to bridge their final differences. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The Minimum Wage Commission on Tuesday set South Korea's legal minimum wage for next year at 10,700 won, or about $7.20 per hour. The new rate marks a 3.7% increase from this year's minimum wage of 10,321. The decision came after lengthy negotiations involving representatives from labor, business, and the public. During Tuesday's meeting, the two sides submitted a total of 13 revised proposals in an effort to reach a compromise. Labor representatives initially demanded a minimum wage of 12,000 won an hour, arguing that workers need greater support to keep up with rising living costs. Business groups, meanwhile, called for the wage to remain unchanged at this year's level, citing concerns over rising labor costs and the burden on small businesses.
The minimum wage is a uniform standard, so the decision should be based on the realities facing small businesses and vulnerable sectors that are already struggling to keep up with the current wage.
In the final round of negotiations, labor lowered its proposal to 10,731, while business representatives offered 10,701. With the two sides unable to bridge the remaining 31 gap, the Commission put the issue to a vote and ultimately adopted the business side's proposal. Under the law, the Commission was required to finalize next year's minimum wage by mid-July, allowing the Labor Minister to officially announce the new rate by August 5th. The 2026 minimum wage had increased 2.9% from the previous year. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Marking 2 decades of cooperation along the East Asian-Australasian Flyway, an international forum has been held in int'l, home to globally important wetlands that provide vital habitats for migratory water birds. Our Cho Young-in has more.
The black-faced spoonbill, one of the world's rarest water birds, was once on the brink of extinction. Its global population fell below 400 in the 1990s, leading to its classification as endangered on the IUCN Red List. Today, the population has rebounded to more than 7,000 and the species has been reclassified as vulnerable. Its remarkable recovery is regarded as one of the greatest conservation success stories along the East Asian-Australasian Flyway, where governments, conservation experts, and partner organizations have worked together to protect migratory birds and their habitats.
Well, the black-faced spoonbill has been one of our 7 flagship species. And so I think now we have a model about how to make the saving of a species work.
Experts say protecting migratory birds begins with protecting their habitats, especially coastal wetlands. As rapid urbanization and coastal development continue across the region, experts stress that no single country can protect biodiversity alone.
It's important that these efforts at the region are also not just promoted and sustained across the 11 member states of ASEAN, but across generation, because our efforts will continue beyond several generations.
Korea provides a strong example of such cooperation, with its tidal flats serving as important breeding and feeding grounds for endangered species. Since the Korean tidal flats were inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List in 2021, efforts to protect and manage the sites have been strengthened through closer cooperation between local governments and international partners. Experts say such global recognition helps highlight the importance of conserving habitats and maintaining ecological connectivity.
Korea's West Coast tidal flats are exceptionally rich in biodiversity, providing abundant food resources for migratory birds. Preventing the loss and degradation of these wetlands is therefore essential to protecting their feeding grounds. Resting areas are also important, but continued coastal development has left birds with fewer places to rest when the tide comes in.
After the momentum built here over the past 2 decades, there are even stronger calls for long-term cooperation, with the future of biodiversity depending on shared global commitments extending beyond national borders. Cho Young-in, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Federal Reserve Chairman Kevin Warsh told lawmakers on Tuesday he would continue doing his job if challenged by President Trump. His comments come as new data showed consumer prices in June rose by less than expected. Testifying before the House Financial Service Committee, Warsh cited a recent Supreme Court ruling reaffirming the central bank's independence in setting monetary policy. Also on Tuesday, inflation data showed the U.S. Consumer Price Index increased by 3.5% year-on-year, which was less than expected. Warsh cautioned against reading too much into the improvement, saying he would not, quote, cherry-pick 1 month of data as a sign that inflation had been resolved. Energy prices drove much of the decline, though oil prices have since climbed again following renewed conflict in the Middle East. Kevin Warsh will testify again before the Senate Banking Committee on Wednesday. In the U.S., writer E. Jean Carroll has collected just over $5.6 million from President Trump following a 2023 jury verdict finding him liable for sexual abuse and defamation. A federal judge authorized the payment last week over Trump's objections, and funds were released to Carroll's legal team on Monday. The amount covers the original $5 million verdict plus accumulated interest. This comes after the Supreme Court rejected Trump's appeal of the verdict last month. It marks the first time Trump has been forced to pay Carroll, who has now won a combined $88.3 million across 2 separate civil verdicts since first denying her allegations in 2019. A spokesperson for Trump's legal team maintained the case represents a politically motivated attack, calling the case a hoax. Spain have reached the World Cup final with a 2-0 victory over France. Mikel Oyarzabal opened the scoring with the first half penalty before Pedro Porro doubled Spain's lead in the second half. Spain limited France to just 2 shots on target throughout the match. The victory at Dallas Stadium in Texas on Tuesday sends Spain to its first World Cup final since winning the tournament in 2010. Spain will face either England or Argentina in Sunday's showpiece final in New Jersey. A fossilized skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus rex has sold for $50.1 million, becoming the most expensive dinosaur fossil ever auctioned. The specimen, nicknamed Gus, far exceeded its pre-sale estimate after a bidding war by 7 collectors. The sale at Sothebys on Tuesday surpasses the previous record of $44.6 million paid for a Stegosaurus skeleton in 2024. Discovered in South Dakota and estimated at 67 million years old, Gus contains 183 fossil bone elements and is considered one of the most complete T-Rex specimens ever found.
The heavy rain has eased, but don't put your umbrella away just yet. Rain will continue on and off across much of the country through this afternoon, and strong winds will remain a concern. Most of central regions will see 5 to 20 millimeters of rainfall, while Jeollabuk-do province could see up to 40 millimeters. Heat alerts also remain in place for the East Coast and most of Gyeongsang-do provinces, with afternoon temperatures hovering above 35 degrees Celsius again, and humidity will remain high, so it's going to be quite muggy nationwide. And this afternoon, intense heat takes a break in the capital area with an expected high of 29 degrees here in Seoul, but Daegu and Gyeongju will be sizzling hot at 35 degrees. Rain returns again tomorrow in certain parts of Korea, and it's going to be wet through the long weekend, with nationwide rain forecasted on Sunday.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.